Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel. And why do I know it's amazing? We didn't record it yet because the guest today is guaranteed to give you some amazing content. It is a repeat guest. It's none other than Craig Goldenfarb. Craig was here in episode 291, Building the Seven-Figure Attorney Mindset and Reality with Craig Goldenfarb. So if you want to listen to that one first and get to know him a little bit before listening to this one, you're welcome to do that. You can find it easily at profitwithlaw.com/291. profitwithlaw.com/291. Let me tell you a bit about Craig. I went to his seven-figure attorney workshop that he does in New York City, together with John Fisher, who runs his mastermind day the next day. And I met some really amazing people at that event, but really I got to see Craig for who he is, and just an entire day of giving and just basically opening up his playbook and what's going on in his business and how he builds his business. It was really, it was insightful, but it was also inspirational for somebody like me who's out here sharing with everybody. Not that I don't open up and share, but just to see someone else do it so authentically, I just said, okay, that's, I want to strive to get my people to feel the same way when I'm sitting with them. And it was just a wonderful experience. So he's going to share about it at the end of the episode. And if it's something that you can attend, I highly recommend going and attending his one-day experience, because it's really going to help you create some insight and also to implement some things in your business that you perhaps are not doing yet. I want to be really careful not to double dip. In other words, I want you to go listen to episode 291, and I want today's episode to be something completely new. And real quick, just a little bit about Craig, and this is the official bio. Craig is the CEO of his personal injury law firm. He has more than 70 employees and 12 attorneys. He has 2 offices in Southeast Florida and has had his own law firm for 20 years. He moved away from handling cases more than 10 years ago, speaks nationally on how to run your law firm like a business and many other related topics. And like I said, once you meet Craig, it's kind of hard to not be magnetized to him. And just a wonderful, wonderful person, but he's built this massive law firm in an area that's highly competitive. I mean, there's a lot of law firms in South Florida, and he has really created something amazing. And in our recording in episode 291, we just touched the surface on what is law firm culture, and how has he created the culture in his firm that has allowed him to grow to the level that he's grown today. And I wanted to bring him back to talk about this specific topic. So, Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Moshe. And those were very kind words. I appreciate it. Great to be back here.
Awesome. So I want to jump right in. And the first question is really like, is culture the thing? Because I think that's why we wanted to dive into it more. Is culture the thing that you would pin success on when it comes to building a law firm that like you have built?
I think culture is probably within the top 3 things as to my success in building a law firm, because people want to follow a leader, but more so of a leader of a person, they want to follow a feeling. And work culture is a feeling. And once you get into a work culture and you feel like you're at home, like you're safe, like you're valued, it's just like feeling that way anywhere else in your life, right? If you feel safe and valued and comfortable at home, you want to be at home. If you feel that way also at work, what a luxury and what a blessing. So one of my roles as CEO, I call myself Chief Encouragement Officer. Chief Encouragement Officer. And that's because my job, I think, in one way, is to inspire a team and to encourage them to be their best and to really have a home at work. So I'm actually speaking out in Utah next week at the Filevine convention, and I just finished my PowerPoint. We're lucky that PowerPoint's on firm culture, so I'm able to reference that and talk about that today.
Awesome. My friend Joey Vitale, you might know him, recently gifted me a book. He sent it to me in the mail, and it's Trust and Inspire by Stephen Covey. And I don't know if you've seen the book, but Stephen in his book talks about this idea of there's two types of leadership or management styles. And one is what he calls the carrot and stick method. And the other is the trust and inspire method. And the carrot and stick method is where basically people have ultimatums and rewards to get them to do what you want them to do. And in the trust and inspire method, you're developing trust in your people and you're inspiring them to be the best version of themselves. And it's interesting because in your very first couple of sentences, you already use the word inspire. You're the chief encouragement officer. You want to inspire your people. Clearly, without reading his book, that's what you've been doing, is to inspire your people. Now, there's a big difference between managing people and inspiring them. Can we talk a little bit about what that looks like for you? How do you inspire somebody to rise into the best version of themselves as opposed to just making them think that they're just doing their job?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that book, which I have not read, but if I were to ask myself, I think I use a combination of both methods. So I trust and inspire, and I'll tell you how I do that first. And then I do use carrots. I don't use sticks a lot. I use a lot of carrots, rewards, because they're positive. We have talked about what sticks to use, but in our culture, sticks hurt. So we don't want to penalize people. We want to have them aligned with our vision to get to the carrots. So we like carrots better than sticks. So if you were to ask me which of those two methods of leadership I use, I would definitely say both. And I have such a good incentive program and KPI program and rewards program that we use mainly carrots. But what's interesting is if you do a combination of both, you use trust and inspire, the carrots that are there are just like icing on the cake. So not only do they want to meet their goals because they trust you and you inspire them, but then there's a gift at the end or a reward, which is the carrots. So I use a combination. And you asked me about trust and inspire. How do you do that or get their trust and inspire? Well, it starts out under our system, which we use the EOS system, Entrepreneurial Operating System, of running our company. And that's based on a book by Gino Wickman, which many of us have read, called Traction. And it talks about having a mission statement and having core values. That's one of the ways you get people aligned with your vision. So if you run EOS in your company or any management system, you've really got to have a why. You know, there's all those books by Simon Sinek who talks about your why, finding your why. Great books. So if you really know your corporate why, then you can create a mission statement. For example, our personal injury firm in Florida is we hold accountable those who hurt others. We hold accountable those who hurt others. Now, to most of the people in my law firm, that's very inspiring because we want accountability and responsibility for our clients who have been hurt. And we've worked on and crafted that mission statement, and we want everybody knowing it. And then we have our core values, which are 5 or 6 things. And the book Traction takes you through the exercise of what are your core values. What's interesting is you have to make sure your employees know the mission statement and they know the core values. So we have a mouse pad right here, which I think you can see, with our core values on it that gets distributed to everybody in our firm. And I walk around and I quiz people on core values and give them a $5 Starbucks gift card if they can name all 6 of our core values. That way it's fun, they're all vested, and we talk about it. And the important point is that you don't just stick it on a mouse pad. You talk about it and you use it. So for example, when we hire people, in the process of hiring people, we tell them our core values and we ask them to comment on 1 or 2 of them, what it means to them. And it actually works because then they realize even at the interview that we have core values. And it also importantly, we fire based on core values. One of our core values is integrity. And we had a couple of employees over the last 5 years who did something that did not meet our core value of integrity. We let them know, we give them 1 chance. And if they continue to violate that core value, they're gone. So not only do you create a mission statement, core values, you've got to actually display them, use them, and run your firm accordingly.
Yeah, I love that. And you can see I clearly am a fan of Gino Wickman's, with Traction being on the shelf behind me over my right shoulder, for those of you watching the video. But another thing that he shares in Traction is that when you hire somebody, there's two roles that they need to fit. They have to be the right fit for the organization and the right seat that they're sitting in. And when he deals with the right fit, he says that you can give them the core value test. So once you know what your core values are, you can ask them to do the same exercise and come up with their own personal core values. And you want to have at least two of your core values match when you bring somebody into the organization, because when you do that, you're automatically getting somebody who fits well into your core value structure. They're not going to match all of them, but when you have at least two of those core values matching and three is extra credit, what that means is that they're in semi-alignment with you, and it's a lot easier to bring somebody from semi-alignment to alignment than than from being completely misaligned and trying to get them to embody everything that you stand for. And that's worked really well for us to kind of filter some people out during the hiring process here in our business. So I love that you reference Gino and the core values, and I really love your mouse pad idea. Another thing that we do is once a week we have a team meeting. We start the team meeting with somebody reciting our core values and then sharing a story in their own life or an inspiration in their own life or something they saw another team member do that embodies one of the core values. So we're constantly giving them an opportunity to put it to use and see where where it comes into play. So when creating culture, I mean, you talked about having a mission statement, having core values. What's next? Like how do you get your leadership team to actually embody it? And I mean, I know you have the mouse pad and you want people to do it, but is there anything else that you do to actively get the company to lead from the top when it comes to your core values and your mission statement?
So the first part of the answer to your question, Moshe, is the first way to make sure that culture is important to you is to have the buy-in of the owner, meaning you or me or the lawyer. So what do we care about? Well, if we're good business people, we care about making money and our business at least sustaining itself, right? The businesses must sustain. So this first slide is meant to change your mindset that culture matters. In other words, you got to really, as the boss, you got to actually buy into it instead of saying this is a bunch of bullcrap and I don't want to spend 3 hours coming up with mission statement and core values if it's a waste of my time. I'm a lawyer. So you really got to boil it down. So the Harvard Business Review did a study on the value of happiness in the workplace, and they found some pretty amazing data as results at companies in general, that employees that are happy produce 37% greater sales, are 31% more productive, are 23% less tired, and way more creative. So the bottom line is, if you haven't bought into this as a boss, everybody knew that bosses wouldn't buy into work culture because it's fluffy and touchy-feely. So they actually wanted to get some data to support it. So this really helps shift your mindset from, I don't have time for this garbage, to this is going to make me more money. So step one is get the buy-in of the owner. And if you don't believe this, then you're not going to be able to take your passion for culture and actually download it to the rest of your company, because you don't believe it. If you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it, and they can tell fraud a mile away. So I think that there are 4 different parts to a company of culture. The first is to define your law firm's culture, which is the mission statement and core values, and the things I talked about 10 minutes ago, which are define it, but not only define it, but make sure you disseminate it to the rest of your staff. Make sure you talk about it like you did. You said that you do once a week. And then make sure you quiz people on it, which is kind of fun. Giving out gift cards when people know it is cool. And then you hire and fire based on your firm's culture. So the first is really define it. The second is give them a great place to work. And I have a bunch of slides here on giving them a great place to work. And I'm just going to go through all 4 of these and then ask you what you'd like to do, what you'd like to ask me about these, Moshe. But the second is give them a great place to work. And that has many different components, which I can go into. But my overall mission statement on number 2 is, if they wake up in the morning and they are not like, oh, I got to go to work, then you've got a win. You have a win with that employee. And if they wake up in the morning, they're like, oh, cool, I get to go to work. And that's not always true with every level of employee. But if they really genuinely feel like work is a safe and fun and warm place, then number 2 works. Give them a great place to work. I say to every employee at an interview, you're going to be spending more time with us, 80 hours or more, than even close to what you spend with your family for your time as a career at my office. If you're spending 80 plus hours a week, I must. It's not a should. It's a must. I must produce a place for you where you feel safe and comfortable and enjoyable. Must. It's an imperative to me. So give your employees a great place to work. Number 3 is compensate them well. Now, that's a tough one for business owners to swallow, but I pay about 10% above my my geographical area for most jobs because I want to keep people there. Money sometimes is people's number 1 driver, although it's very important to me to figure out what people's drivers are. And in my office, money is the number 1 driver in less than half. Less than half of my 72 employees, money is their number 1 driver for why they work. That's really crucial. So you got to figure out what they want. But if it is close to half or whatever number 3 is quite important. Money is quite important. So you got to focus on number 3. And one way to figure out what they are or what they want is to read the 5 love languages of the workplace, which is the sequel to the 5 love languages at home. And the 5 love languages of the workplace is a way of figuring out what each of your employees' love language is at work. It cannot be physical affection, obviously at work, although physical affection is one of them for the 5 love languages. It can't be at work because you can't touch them. But there are 5 love languages at work. So I love that book for number 3. Figure out what they want. Read that book, and you'll be able to figure out what the number 1 drivers are for all of your employees. And then finally, number 4 is keep them engaged and fulfilled. And my best example of that is a few of the pictures I have on the screen right now. We give dozens and dozens of opportunities throughout the year for employees to do something with a charity or an activity or something in the community where we pay them during the workday to go out and do something where they feel engaged and fulfilled. So that's the short version of the 4 pillars, I think, of a workplace that employees love.
Yeah, I love these four things that you shared, and I'm going to backtrack to something you said earlier. You mentioned the word boss when you were describing how somebody operates, and I think that if you want to embody mission statement and core values and take this culture journey, if you want to really believe that culture is the thing that's going to drive profitability, it's going to drive sales, it's going to drive productivity, it's going to drive creativity. It also requires you to rethink what you call yourself, right? And how you see yourself. I think that if somebody operates in the terms of, hey, I'm the boss, it's very hard for you to step in and embody these 4 pillars. The word boss kind of means like I tell everybody what to do, right? And going back to the carrot and stick, it's more aligned with the stick part of that, right? And I think that you need to want to lead. You need to want to be a leader. You need to want to be an example, somebody that your people look up to and say, "Wow, I want to be like this person. I want to be like him or her."
I would add the word guide as well, because a lot of people come to me in my office for me to guide them, and people like leaders, but there are different types of leaders. There's benevolent leaders and evil leaders, but guides are always benevolent, right? So a guide,
yes.
You can't be an asshole and be a guide. I mean, you can, but it's not very common. A guide is someone who is your partner, whereas a leader may be above you or could be considered above you. So I like the terms leader and guide way more than boss. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Awesome. I had a manager that I was a direct report to in a previous job, and he kept a couch in his office. And I asked him once, I said, why do you have a couch in your office? He said, because I have 2 roles, and one of them is to be the psychologist for everyone on my team. So they come in here, they sit on the couch, and they share their problems with me. And, and that's part of what I do, is to let people just feel free enough to be able to open up and talk to me so that they can get it off their mind and be able to go back and do what they need to do. So it along the lines of the guide, it brought that experience to mind. You had mentioned jumping into any questions I had about this, and these are great. And the pictures, which for those who are listening, there's pictures of the entire team. There's one where they're delivering Meals on Wheels. There's another where it looks like they're doing a food pantry thing, and then there's another one where they're all in a group picture, and it says behind it, "Not all heroes wear capes." And I'm not sure what they were doing there, but it looks like it's all community involvement, charity involvement, which is wonderful. When you say keep employees engaged and fulfilled and give employees a great place to work, and you're using these pictures as examples, is it just the community involvement and the charitable involvement, or are there things in the day-to-day that you use as well to embody those two pillars?
Well, one thing that we did was I'm a kid of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. So I'd always ask my wife if I could have an 80s themed man cave at home. And of course, the answer was no, you can't. So what I determined is I'm going to have an 80s themed game room. We call it the celebration room in my office. And we just moved less than a year ago to new offices, which allowed me the blessing of enough office space to create an 80s themed game room, which is actually, we had posted last week on TikTok a little tour of my 80s themed game room. And in that room, we have, if you're my age, if you're in your 50s, you remember Bumper Pool. You remember, of course, foosball that still has lasted. We have a Star Wars pinball machine, and we have the arcade table, which has 60 games like Donkey Kong, Galaga, Centipede, Pac-Man, etc. Now, that speaks to me and all of the 50-year-old people and 40-year-old people in my office. But one of the reasons we did that is to just give this feeling of warmth. And despite the fact that I think I'm a good leader, nobody went in there for the first month. And that's because I failed to give the rules. Mm-hmm. The rules are that you can be in there 15 to 20 minutes twice a day. And until I gave those rules, nobody went in because they were all scared. But, because all I do is chief encouragement officer, well, that's my major role, I noticed people weren't going in there. So I went around and did a little survey. Hey, why don't you ever go in the game room? And they're like, we know you're a nice guy, Craig, but we don't want to look like we're playing all day. So I had to send out an email and make a sign and all that kind of stuff to celebrate the celebration room. And now there's a lot of interaction in there. And I'll tell you, as far as keeping them engaged and fulfilled, nothing goes better than just taking a break, a mental health break, and going into a game room and blowing off some steam playing foosball. So your question was, is it just charity and stuff in the community? No, it's not. It's stuff within the office during the business day where we encourage people to play. And I know it sounds a little bit like I have Google going on or, some tech company, but they're onto something. They're onto something, which is if you give people the freedom to go from left brain to right brain and have some fun, or right brain to left brain, whichever it is, that keeps them engaged and fulfilled. How many law firms or professional services companies have a game room? Not a lot.
Yeah,
so
I would guess it's very few. Yeah,
very few. So that's one way in-house that we keep them engaged and fulfilled. There's a lot of other things we do, but I think that the celebration room is a good example.
Yeah. Now it's interesting because you called it the celebration room, but you have people going in there twice a day, 15 minutes each. I almost thought that it was going to be like every time that you have something to celebrate that you get to, go in there.
We go in there. We do for celebrations as well. So that's why it's named that. We have our tree trimming in there for Christmas time. We have, that's a 2-hour event or 1-hour event where we trim the Christmas tree, even though I'm Jewish. We still do it. And we have all kinds of celebrations in there as well. So that's why we named it the celebration room.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure for some of our listeners, what's coming up for them is like, okay, this sounds really nice, but until I'm at Craig's level with 70 employees, I probably can't do any of this in my firm because I need my people to be working every day and be productive every day. And I kind of know the answer to this because it's the same thing that they struggle with when they decide whether to invest in marketing or invest in bringing on new staff. You always have that question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. And interestingly, the podcast guest preceding you, because I batch my recordings for an entire day, we had a conversation like this, and I gave some examples where You can't watch Apple stock at $100, watch it go to 150 and say, okay, I'm going to get involved at 100. It's too late. You missed that. It's now at 150. You can't go to a bank and say, pay me interest. And when you're done paying interest, I'll put money in to that interest should be paid on. So you kind of need to hire staff, invest in marketing in order to get the results that's going to bring. What are your thoughts on affordability of being able to do this? And when should somebody consider starting to embody this?
Absolutely. So the answer is when you should consider it is today, no later than today or tomorrow at the latest. And let me, I'm screen sharing now, so I'm showing you a couple of things that, my celebration room is great for a big law firm. And you're right, everybody's saying, okay, I can't afford that. And I have, 6 employees. That's not happening. So let me break it down for a small law firm. So, another thing I have on the screen is some events that are in-house. We have Wear Red Day, which is for the American Heart Association. So that gets everybody unified. And then we give a check to the American Heart Association. We have Take Your Child to Work Day.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt for a moment because there's a picture up on the screen with the entire team. Everybody's wearing red except for Mr. Craig Goldenfarb in his blue suit and white shirt sitting right in the front. What happened there?
Well, what happened there is I actually had either a podcast or a speech I was giving that day, and I forgot to change into my red stuff, and I had to rush into the red room with 60 employees there, 50 at that time, and I didn't have red on. But you're right, I stick out like a sore blue thumb there in that picture, so that's funny. So we also have Take Your Child to Work Day, which we actually had skits by some of our employees when their kids came in, and we had the director of marketing run it, and we got to meet everybody's kids. I don't suggest that you bring in kids younger than 8, and I don't suggest you bring in kids older than 16. So we did bring your kids to work, and we had a little schedule, and then we gave them lunch. So it was like 8 to 12. And nothing says you care about your employees more than inviting the kids to work. And of course, you do that on a summer day, so the kids are out of school. So we did 8 to 12 with a lunch. So that's something that you can afford, something that a small firm can afford, is Take Your Kids to Work Day. That's one example. And another example is just appreciating your employees in general. So one way you can do that is we have, I think there's Bosses Day or something. So when there's a national holiday for everything. So on Bosses Day, if you can see my screen, we bring in a catered lunch, and the lawyers and the chief executives have aprons on in this picture, and we're all serving lunch to our employees. So we are of service. The people who usually are being served are now of service. And if you can see in the picture, all of us were given nicknames by the staff. So my nickname, because I'm a little bit OCD, was Rain Man from the movie, the movie Rain Man with Tom Cruise. So I'm a little crazy. I have OCD. So I'm Rain Man, and all the lawyers pictured in there are attorneys, and we serve lunch to the staff. And again, you're flipping the roles. Instead of them serving us, we're serving them. So that's one example of something that your firm can do, is to switch roles. Instead of you're the boss or you're the leader, you are the servant to your employees for a day. And then I just click to my next screen, which is to honor and reward your employees and actually ask them for their feedback. So we have Team Member of the Month, which many law firms have, but you can make Team Member of the Month pretty special and give them something special. Like we used to give them a covered parking spot for the month. We actually had a sash made, like a silly, a beauty pageant sash, which they'd wear the rest of the day, or at least put on the back of their chair if they're too embarrassed to wear it. Like you won a beauty pageant. The women love to wear it. Most of the guys do not. They'll put it on the back of their chair, but it's still cool to have a Team Member of the Month on your chair for a month or however long you want to put it up. So we gave a covered parking spot, a check for $250, a gift card, a sash, and something else, like 5 things. I mean, it's a big deal to be Team Member of the Month. And we let employees nominate other employees for Team Member of the Month. So again, we're not saying we're the bosses. We know everything. We want them to nominate each other and tell us why. So you can give a shout out to someone else. That's great, that we wouldn't know they did something so great. So that's involving the employees in the decision of Team Member of the Month. And so we got their buy-in. So that's a recognition you can do whether you have 2 employees or 200 employees. And then a survey. I mean, how many law firms or professional business services do you think send out employee surveys like we do? How can we support you in your job? What do you like least about your job? What do you like most about your job? And then if it's confidential, who are you in conflict, and how can we support that conflict and resolve that conflict with? But how many people actually give surveys and spend time reading the feedback on surveys for people in their company? And how much do they feel cared about when you do send them a survey? That's why my turnover is practically zero, Moshe. And I have over 70 people. And I have pretty much nobody leave my law firm because of all these things. And if you don't understand or don't get the economic benefit of nobody leaving your company, then you don't know what you're doing. Because it's obvious that if nobody leaves your company, you're going to make profits.
Yeah, it's very true. And one of the biggest drains on a business as the business grows is employee turnover, not making the wrong hire or having somebody leave after you've brought them on. And sometimes it's out of your control, whether they got hit by a bus or their spouse is moving out, because of their job and they have to follow. But most of the time they're leaving because they're unhappy, they're dissatisfied, it wasn't what they thought it was, and these are all things that would address that. And I can imagine that if I was working in a place that had a team member of the month that was celebrated that way, that was involved in the local charities, that had a game room that I could be in twice a day, I would want to work there. So what I'm seeing is basically make this an environment that you would want to be in and not want to leave if you were the employee, and essentially you're going to create that for your people. This is really amazing stuff, and I think one of the things that people as they're growing their team try to figure out is, how do I get everybody to do not just what I need them to do, but to take initiative and to be able to do more than I need them to do, to be more involved. For example, right now we're promoting our own workshop that's happening in Fort Lauderdale, and I had to decide, this marketing's not working. I want to try another marketing tactic. I want to try something else. I'm still driving those ideas, and I want my team to drive those ideas. I want them to say, hey, this is not working. Here's something that I thought of that I would, that I want to try. How do you get to that point in your organization?
Well, part of it is right person, right seat, which is what you were talking about in traction, which that's the code name for having the people who fit your culture. So that's the right person, and then in the right place in your right culture. And that's interesting too, because you could have someone who's wonderful for your culture, but they're in the wrong job position. So we've had one guy who's been in our law firm who's our best firm ambassador. He embodies our firm culture, but he's had 5 different jobs in my law firm. We hadn't found the right seat for him yet. And it's amazing to me that it took us 5 tries to find out that he belongs in our people department, which is our culture department. We have a firm department of 2 people or 3 people that is devoted to culture, and the head is called the CPO. That's the Chief People Officer. So he was the right person for 10 years, but it took us until 2 years ago to find out the right seat. So the first part of the answer to your question is to find people who are aligned with your vision, because if they're aligned with your vision, then they will innovate and they will come up with these things, not just you. So when we have a goal in place, whatever that goal is, we hold accountable those who hurt others. That's our mission statement. And there are all these tasks that involve doing that. So if they're really striving to reach that mission, if they share your core values, they share your mission statement, they will innovate. And what you're doing right now is called innovation, which is that you're coming up with all the innovations. So it's possible in that scenario, I would say always fault the leader. If anything goes wrong, I take ownership of it because I have not inspired them correctly to innovate. And there's a great speech I heard. Carla Johnson has a great book on innovation, and I heard her speak a couple of months ago. She's a leading thought leader on innovation and what it takes in the workplace. And she goes over the processes of inspiring people to innovate in any business. And it's a fantastic read. She's a fantastic speaker. But you don't really think about a law firm as a place of innovation, where you create things and create marketing techniques or create structures that are different or that are new. But if your people are inspired and rewarded to innovate, that's going to create a great culture. And one example is in Japan. In some of the ways that those companies are run, they get bonuses for innovations. If you come up with a new procedure that we adopt, you get X amount of money. How smart and brilliant is that? That you're now paying for innovation. So if you think your job could be done better by whatever methods you do, and we adopt it, you get $100. And if you do 5 such procedures, you get $500. How absurd is that no law firms reward innovation? How absurd. Well, that's one of the ways we get people to be creative is we give money and we reward it. And it's a culture here of innovation. Instead of being scared to go to your boss and saying, I think we should do it a different way, which most people are petrified to do. How about if you're encouraged to go to your boss and say, I think we should do it a different way? How new is that?
Yeah, I love that concept. And just to backtrack real quick, the name of the book by Carla Johnson is Rethink Innovation: How the World's Most Prolific Innovators Come Up with Great Ideas That Deliver Extraordinary Outcomes. We're going to link that up in the show notes, which is available in your podcast player in the description. It's also available at profitwithlaw.com. So Craig, I want to be mindful of our time as we're nearing into the end of our recording here. We talked about mission statement. We talked about core values. We talked about your 4 pillars. We talked about innovation, getting people to be innovative and incentivizing them to do so and being willing to invest in that and pay for that. What else about culture did we not cover that is important for our listeners to hear, that you've experienced or that you've embodied or implemented in your law firm? I think personally, I think that our listeners, even at the end, like there's buy-in to the concept, right? Like I understand how important this is, and I understand that I need to start this now. But it's a question of how. When I share the profit first idea with people, I tell them, look, it sounds complicated to implement the whole thing. Start with just opening one separate bank account that's your profit account, and just start putting 1% of revenue in there. That's step one. Once you're doing that, and you can start to feel the difference, you start to see the difference, you start to actually see money gathering in that account and recognizing that this is possible. Let's go back and do step 2, 3, 4, and 5. So where do people start and get going with this?
Well, under what I call pillar number 2, which is give your employees a great place to work, I've shared on the screen one of my slides, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, because giving your employees a great place to work has so many different parts to it. So one of the parts is input and empowerment. So what I mean by input and empowerment is, for example, we bonus our managers with what I call KPIs, a KPI measurement, which is key performance indicators. So someone asked me, well, how do you come up with the KPIs for a marketing director? And the answer is, I don't. I let them come up with the KPIs. So if I'm going to come up with the KPIs, I let them come up with the first draft. So a marketing director one KPI could be 10 blog posts for the year. That could be a KPI, right? And so he comes to me on that first KPI, and I say, no, it should be 20. And then we compromise and we make it 15. So now we've set one KPI of 15 blog posts for the year. I wouldn't have thought of that one because I'm not the marketing director. I forgot that we do blog posts. So it would be really stupid for me to be the one to create the 20 KPIs because I forgot we do blog posts at my law firm. So you let the person have input. In other words, with most things that my people do, you let them start the process of how to do it because they know it way better than you do. Instead of telling them how to do a demand letter, if you're a personal injury lawyer, ask them how they do a demand letter. And then see if the two of you can work together to do a demand letter better. That's called input. And what you get from input is buy-in because they've participated in the process. If they've participated in the process and so have you have a unified mission on that process and you have buy-in because they can never say, why do I have to do it this way? They didn't even ask me. I don't do it this way. I do it the other way because I know the better way. But if you have input that you give to your staff, then you get buy-in. And when you have buy-in, you have success. So input is a major key to give your employees a great place to work. That's one. And please cut me off anytime you want to. Another element is stable work environment. You would be shocked when we interview people, the work environments they are putting up with. Either a screaming boss, or a boss who throws staplers, or a boss who slams things or slams his fist on the desk, or a cancerous culture where people are talking about each other that is not stable. And of course, what that triggers is it triggers the amygdala. It triggers you to be in fear or flight all day. And does that make you want to come to work? No, you're triggered all day. You're anxious and stressed out because you're hearing noises, you're hearing yelling, you're seeing people get shit thrown at them, and you're not in a stable environment. We have a no drama office is one of our terms here, where we try as hard as we can to have really no gossiping, no drama, no backstabbing. And that's really hard with 70 human beings. But we really push that throughout our culture is a stable work environment, because you do not want your amygdala triggered at the workforce. You want to be all prefrontal cortex the whole day as much as you can. So stability is something that a lot of company owners don't think about. Just something that makes your brain at ease. And as soon as you start screaming, throwing staplers, gossip, all that crap, you don't have a stable work environment. So that's 2 of the 4 things I have up there. You want me to keep going, or you tell me?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's just cover all those bullets. You got
Great.
3 more to go, right?
Sure. So the first is input and buy-in. The second is stable work environment. And the third is structure, organization, and clarity. So let's just take an example. You come into work the first day and there's no training. You just get handed files or cases or clients. Very unstable, no structure, no training. You don't know what the expectations are for you as to anything. How do I conduct my day? What do I do? Which files do I get first? Is there a structure for this procedure? Again, that's going to trigger fear and discomfort. So what we make sure is the first couple of days, there's a schedule for every new employee of what you do, what training you go through, from the payroll system to how you do your emails. So there's structure. So you come in and you're cared for the first 2 days, and depending on the department, for the first week. So that's structure, organization, and clarity. What are the expectations? What am I expected to do? What is my job role? So they get handed an employee job role document that defines what their job roles are. If you have not put that in writing for every staff member in your office, it's something that I would say you need to do. That's structure, organization, clarity of vision, clarity of what their job is. And yes, that takes a long time to create. But I say, like I say with everything, do one at a time. Just like you said, start small. If you have 6 people in your office, your goal for February, which is the month we happen to be in as we're recording this podcast, your goal for February is to do 2 job role and responsibilities for 2 of your 6 people. That's a very modest goal, or even 1. So take everything slowly and you can create all these structures. So that's the 3rd bullet point on my slide. The 4th bullet point is recognition and appreciation. We did talk about that already, which is, as Chief Encouragement Officer, my job is to encourage people. And you encourage people through recognizing them and appreciating them in some of the ways that I already talked about earlier today. And I walk around with gift cards a lot. I take one employee to lunch every week on Fridays. That's a new little thing I talked about at my seminar. Is every Friday is employee lunch day, and I do it every Friday my entire career. Now I'm up to 70 something employees, so it takes more than a year to go through the list. But even if it's 6 employees, literally every 6 weeks you'll be going to lunch with them. And I don't talk much about work. I talk about their kids, their family, their life, so I get to know them. So recognition, I mean, how special is it to get to go to lunch with the boss, especially when you're in a big corporation? They're scared to death their first lunch, but after the second one or after the first one, they know I'm just a normal guy trying to get to know them and their pets and their dogs and their kids. So that's recognition, is that I care enough about you to actually take you to lunch. And whether you're 2 employees or 70, it doesn't matter. You're showing that you care. So recognition and appreciation. And then the last bullet point here on my slide about give your employees a great place to work is an opportunity for growth. We ask people in our employee surveys, we ask people, what jobs at this company as you know it might you be looking to get into later? And you'd be surprised that someone in intake might want to go into litigation, or someone in marketing might want to go into HR. We have this happen all the time. We hire someone in marketing and they end up in HR. Why? Because we asked them. So you give them the opportunity to growth, and the only way you'll know where they want to go is by asking them. So internal is where you promote someone from within your company. So anytime we have a job available, we purposely post it for 1 week internally only. Post it internally only before you put it on Indeed. Because what if the perfect candidate that's sitting in your legal secretary desk right now wants to be in HR and you never knew it because you didn't post it internally? And if we get no candidates, then we post it externally, and then we go from there. And if we post it internally, we will interview that person no matter what for the job, even if we think they don't belong there, because we want to give them the opportunity to sell themselves and pitch themselves that they want that job. So I say wait 1 week, post it internally. That's internal opportunity for growth. And then external opportunity for growth, which is what law firms miss out on all the time. We provide, through our Blue Cross Blue Shield program, there's a free part of that program that's mental health. We really talk about that a lot. You get free mental health working here. And we don't find out that you're in that program. It's required as part of the program. They don't let the boss know. So I'm perfectly okay with mental health, meaning I'm very tolerant of it. I have therapists myself. I'm open to mental health. Some bosses are not, but for those of you who are concerned about HIPAA and security, they don't tell you which employees are taking advantage of that program. But equally important to part of mental health is opportunities for CLEs, continuing legal education, continuing paralegal education, and even things that have nothing to do with law. Even things that have nothing to do with law. So I'm a member of some life coaching courses. One of them is called Landmark, which I found particularly rewarding for 20 years. I provide a 50% scholarship. I'll pay for half of your going to Landmark, which has nothing to do with law. It's just a life coaching course. So if you're into some of that stuff, whether it's yoga or meditation courses or Landmark or anything that has nothing to do with law, what if you give them a scholarship and pay for half? What if you'll pay for half of their yoga classes? What if you'll pay for half of their gym membership? What if you'll pay for half of Landmark? What if you adopt a program like the Dream Manager program, which is another wonderful book where you can pay for half of things that are on your employee's bucket list? We have a program where we pay for half of the cost, up to $1,000 per employee, through a Dream Manager program of something that might be on their bucket list. That's external opportunity for growth. You have vested in something they want to do, and you pay up to 50% of it. Now, if you don't have the money, pay for 10% of it. Just chip in something, and it's payroll deducted under the Dream Manager program. So just like you chip into your 401k, you chip into a separate category in your payroll program called your Dream Manager or your Dream. That's something where people get vested, and if their dream is to go on a cruise, and I end up paying for $500 or $1,000 of that cruise, and it takes them 3 years to payroll deduct to get up to that cruise, are they going to leave me? No, because they want to stay the 3 years to get fully vested in the cruise that they've always wanted to take. So these are just a couple of little pointers on internal and external opportunities for growth, which people care about.
I really, really love this, and I love the examples that you provided. I mean, it goes from what feels like must-haves to optionals, but I think that they're all must-haves if you just have to grow into them and step into them. But so many firm owners start off hiring people. They know they need people, but there's no plan around how am I going to make sure that they know what they need to do, that they know what they're supposed to do, that they're clear on what their job is. You talked about clarity on day 1, 2, and 3 of when they work, but I'm talking about 6 months, a year into them working, or even more. Sometimes people just don't know, like, what is my responsibility? What is someone else's responsibility? And there's a lot of ambiguity there. And that actually happens naturally as you're growing, because when you first start bringing people on, people do need to wear multiple hats. You can't hire somebody who's just going to be HR. You might have to hire somebody who's going to be HR and marketing and and something else. But there needs to be clarity around that. You need to know who's doing what, and they need to know what's expected of them.
We actually have. I agree, and we actually have some documents. Like, we're a litigation firm. We're personal injury. So we have a team. Each of our litigation teams is a lawyer, a paralegal, and a scheduling secretary. So it's a team of three. So we realized very quickly 20 years ago that the scheduling secretary and the paralegal, their jobs overlap, of course, right? One does scheduling and the other does paralegal work. So we produced a document 20 years ago that says what a secretary does, a litigation secretary, and then the second half of the document is what a litigation paralegal does. So it now clearly defines what each of them does and doesn't do. So we know how to handle various things. So if you don't have that strict delineation, you're going to have overlapping of work. You're going to have people pointing fingers at each other saying, oh, I thought that was her job or his job. So you're absolutely correct.
Right. Or worse, somebody handing something to somebody else and that person saying, why are you giving this to me? That's your job.
Absolutely.
And creating animosity in the workplace. Yeah, it really it'll help boost productivity and reduce churn because people will be happier. So it's something we don't talk about a lot, but it's really important. These have all been really, really good, and like always, Craig, you didn't disappoint. It's really fun to hear about what you're doing. And every time that we talk, I think that I want to just quit my business, shut it down, and come work for you because it just sounds like so much fun. So, but that's, I think that's the point. And ultimately that's what you want to create is you want to create an environment where people not only have clarity and not only have structure, but they have fun, they enjoy themselves, and they're super productive. And you're not feeling like if they're not working every second of the day, then we're not going to meet our quota or what we need to do or what our goals are. And understanding that giving people the leeway and the freedom to be involved in other things and to have mental breaks and to have these different things is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, and it's going to be helpful. And when you start to embrace and embody a different type of culture, and like Craig said, it's not going to happen overnight. Some of this stuff takes a lot of work and effort, but some of it is easy, and it's just add one piece at a time. Don't try to take it all on at once. And when you do that, you might turn around 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years later, and all of a sudden your business is completely different, and it will drive and fuel the growth of your business. So Craig, you know how I like to close this out. I want you to leave one parting piece of advice to our listeners and also share with them how they can learn more about you or attend your next event.
Sure. Well, if one piece of advice I give is adopt and really relish the fact that work culture is one of the top 3 things, or maybe even top 2 things that leads to success. Your people are your business, and it's not about you, it's about them. And if you can lessen your ego, that this is about you as a business owner, and it's all about the people that work for you, and you can put your ego to the side, then you will be a success. That's the byproduct of humility and the byproduct of helping others. And we all hear about, whenever you help others, it comes back to you 2 or 3-fold. That is true. It's absolutely true. The more generous I got, the more money I made. The more you give away, the more you get. It's really true. So that's the one overall theme of this whole talk. And as far as hearing more of me, if you care to hear more of me, I give a seminar once a year called the 7-Figure Attorney Summit. The website is 7figureattorney.com, and that's the number 7 spelled out. So it's 7figureattorney.com. It's Thursday, April 20th, 2023. It's at the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta, and it's on a Thursday. And then it's back-to-back with John Fisher's Mastermind Experience, which is the following day, Friday, April 21st, 2023, at the same hotel. So if you register for each separately, that's what you need to do. But it's 2 days of very different seminars. And my seminar is a lot of me explaining, I call it, you're getting to look under the hood of a well-run law firm. There's only 3 speakers, me, my chief people officer who talks about culture, and my chief marketing officer who talks about marketing tips for the small or solo practitioner, who is mostly in the room. But there are people in the room of law firms larger than mine. And then there's people in a law firm in the room with 1 employee. So I'm an expert, I think, in law firm ops, I call it, law firm ops is my term, special ops. And I talk about law firm ops for the whole day, along with my chief people officer and my chief marketing officer. So if you care to join us, I am selling nothing at that seminar. Literally, I'm just giving away knowledge. Why? Because it's fun for me. I like to give. There's literally nothing sold there. And it's a one-day seminar, April 20th. I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Craig, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I love that we're able to share this on the podcast as well as on our YouTube channel. And folks, check it out, sevenfigureattorney.com. We're going to link that up in the show notes as well. It'll be posted in the description of the podcast episode, as well as at profitwithlaw.com. If you're not subscribed yet to the podcast, make sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player so that you get notified every time we release a new episode. We're here once a week with another amazing guest, and we will not disappoint. We have lots of amazing talent, just like Craig, that have joined us in the past and will be joining us in the future. There's over 300 episodes for you to binge on if you so choose to do so. But we'd love to have you as a subscriber. If this episode touched a chord, it was something that you feel like, oh my gosh, this was so insightful. This was something that I really needed. You have a friend who needs it too. Take a moment and literally just upload the link to this episode and to your text message conversation. Send it to your friend. Share the wealth with somebody else. By sharing with somebody, you're going to be able to receive, and this is going to not only help you, but help them as well. Thank you so much. And until next time, just keep going, keep listening to the tips and implementing one at a time, and we'll see you next week. Take care.